Retirement is a very personal thing. If you look at the definition of retirement, it means withdrawal. So that sort of implies that we're moving backwards. But I think that now, increasingly, we're tending to think of retirement as the beginning of something else. It's a release from the stresses and long hours of a working life, and perhaps now stepping forward into a new phase of our lives.
So much of my identity is attributed to my job. Do people lose their sense of self when they retire?
Yes, and I think that for some people who are their identity is very much intertwined with their job. After all, for some people, I think it's easier to say what you do than who you are. It's a good time for self-reflection, but I think we should maybe look at it as a way of reinvention. So I think looking at it as a time of change of direction rather than a time of loss.
You have personal experience when it comes to retirement. It's not a straightforward process, is it?
I have to say that I'm still in my 50s. I haven't reached the sort of pension age yet, but my whole life has been worked towards a career in medicine, and I've enjoyed a wonderful 30-year career as a doctor, mainly as a GP. But I noticed that in latter years I was finding it more and more stressful, and it was taking more of a toll on me, both physically and mentally. So rather than retiring, I decided to reframe it and call it a gap year. I had a knee replacement and I was, of course, back in the medical environment, and I was surrounded by nurses and doctors and other patients, and I realised how much of that that job was part of my identity, and I really realised how much I missed that. And so I went back to work.
When it comes to partnerships, should people retire at the same time, or should they forge their own identity?
It has been shown to be a time of stress, actually, for relationships. There was a study done in the US at Cornell University that showed the lowest marriage satisfaction was at the time of retirement, when two people retired together. The good news was that 2 years later, after he'd been retired 2 years, it was the greatest satisfaction in retirement. But there's certainly a little spike in divorces because you're spending a lot of time together that perhaps you weren't before, and there may be not that structure that you had in the day. And I think the secret is perhaps to maintain a little bit of independence and your own identity. So rather to sort of exist in parallel rather than to merge.
I think that's a great advice for anyone at any stage, I think, in their relationships. Joanne, how much of your own life is adapted into the book?
Well, we could argue that fiction is all autobiographical to a degree. In a way, I have channeled some of my own feelings about my career in medicine, the joys it's brought me, and she's reflecting on that as she leaves a career that she has loved. But I suppose I was exploring really what my own thoughts about that through her eyes.
What key message would you like people considering retiring to take from your book?
Most novels start with a question, and in the case of my novel, the question was, what happens if you've been so focused on getting to retirement, and on the day after you retire, you sit down with your partner and you suddenly realise you have very different ideas. Perhaps one wants to go off and travel and have adventures, and one wants to stay at home and enjoy being at home. Is it better that one person gets to follow their dream and have the other person tag along silently resentful, or is it better that both compromise and neither gets what they want? So this is why it's really important to talk about retirement, I think, before you get there and to plan.